So one of the things I think about in my business is there's a couple of things. Obviously you want to squeeze more margin out of the business. You want to position yourself different than the market. You don't want to be able to be perceived like everyone else. And then as the business gets big, and my belief is as you grow a company, in the beginning you're just trying to survive and you're trying to make profit. But then as you become bigger, you really start to take more of a defensive mindset and you say, okay, I've built this asset that I own and I need to protect this. And a lot of guys then get right on insurance and they get right on all the other little things they weren't doing, workers' comp. And so I've thought about organics not only from how can I differentiate myself in the market, how can I make more money out of my company, but also from a protect me looking 10 years out in the future, a defensive strategy. And through Service Autopilot, we've been fortunate to work with a lot of clients, actually a number of clients internationally, but quite a number of clients in Canada. And so I've learned things that I wasn't aware of just simply having a business here in the U.S. about what I believe where things are going. So if you look at Canada, their laws and regulations are completely different. So with all that being said, my question is, what do you think the future is here with organics? And then obviously you fully believe in it. So why is it that we really need to be very serious about moving our companies in this direction from maybe a defensive strategy?
That's an incredible point that I'm not sure a lot of businesses are completely wrapping their hands around or their head around immediately speaking, but more and more are all the time. So when you mention Canada,
yeah,
the majority of Canada now makes it, it's not lawful to apply pesticides for aesthetic purposes or for cosmetic purposes. So if there's a dandelion in your client's lawn, you can't spray it with a 2,4-D based product because that's illegal.
Right.
And because the dandelion is a matter of aesthetics or cosmetics where it's subjective. Some people think that dandelion doesn't belong there. Some people say, hey, maybe it does. So that was a struggle that went on for many years in Canada, and it's really spread through the majority of all the provinces, and the most of the country has legislation in place where you can't use, chemicals. You can't use lawn care pesticides to improve your lawn.
Right.
And we've seen, when you talk about the future, that's actually really trickling down into the United States all the time. Just in terms of legislation, there are multiple states that have implemented similar strategies, although not quite as severe. Take New York State, for example, which is a big deal. They have a bill called the Child Safe Playing Field Act,
right,
which makes it illegal to apply pesticides on school property and in daycare centers, generally where children congregate. So what happens from that standpoint is that and we get calls like this a lot, is when a mom in New York State finds out that there's no weed control being used on the field at the school because the government has decided that it's probably harmful to a child's health, she immediately calls into question what's going on in her own backyard, and whether it's her or her husband or whoever's in charge of taking care of the lawn, you start to ask questions. And those, as a parent too, these are legitimate questions. I'm not a scientist, but, people who are much smarter than I am have determined that it's not a good idea to have the kids playing in the turf where the weeds were sprayed. I'm going to translate that to my property. So New York State's one. Connecticut has a very similar bill. There's lots of counties and towns all over, whether it's the Northeast or the Midwest, and that's really begun to move south. So when you ask about the future as it kind of pertains to what's happened in Canada, it's time to figure it out, because that's really happening literally as we speak.
That's what I'm learning. It's interesting. I'm in Texas, and we have regulations here. We have what's called TDA here, Texas Department of Agriculture. So through Service Autopilot, again, we've got clients everywhere in the U.S., and it's interesting some of the rules and laws in New Jersey, they're completely different than what we even deal here with in Texas. But my theory is we'll eventually see those same things in Texas. And And I think that'd be true of any state. So, like, interesting question. So, I don't know if it's New Jersey or which exact states have these rules, but in some cases, you have to notify neighbors in surrounding areas when you're going to apply a treatment to a property. Are those kinds of things still? Do you still have to do that when you're using an organic program? Does using a true organic program get you or save you any effort in a sense in terms of notifications? And is there anything kind of on the side benefit that comes from it in terms of labor savings, internally saving the team time?
New Jersey is an interesting sort of case study because they not only have proposed pesticide legislation, but now they have fertilizer legislation, and that's an entirely different scenario that we could spend tons of time on too. But the use of chemical nitrogen, phosphorus, and how that applies to pollution and groundwater and all that, we haven't even talked about that yet. But the one state where there is a pre-notification law, and that's New York State. And
is it New York? Okay.
It's been in effect for quite a while. In fact, we dealt with it at Lawn Dog back in the day. And this is one of those. It's kind of hard to deal with, but if you're going to run a respectful and lawful business, you need to follow the letter of the law all the time. What that law states is that anytime you're going to do a liquid application of an EPA-registered control product, you have to notify in writing all abutting neighbors within and I don't remember exactly how many days or what the specifics are now. It's been a while, but you need to notify in writing all abutting neighbors, and not just physically abutting, within X feet of your property line, that you're doing a liquid application. So, New York has taken that, to the next level. That's kind of a big deal. Operationally, that's a pain in the neck.
That is.
That's not easy to comply with. Generally speaking, with organics, you're not going to be using a lot of those, EPA-registered control products. It's something that you just don't have in your arsenal. It's very different.
Right.